Bible Mysteries Unveiled. For thousands of years, the Bible has been revered as a book of wisdom, faith, and divine guidance. But beyond its well-known stories, the scriptures also hold a collection of mysteries that have puzzled scholars and believers for centuries. Hidden within its verses are strange events, mysterious beings, and lost relics that leave us with more questions than answers. What happened to these secrets, and why do some remain unsolved even today? Is it possible that there's more to the Bible's mysteries than we've been told? These are the questions we'll be exploring today. Take, for example, the Nephilim, mentioned briefly in Genesis 6:4. Described as giants or mighty ones, their origins and purpose are unclear, and their presence raises profound questions. Were they the result of human and angelic unions, as some ancient texts suggest? Or are they something entirely different, something that has been erased from mainstream history? Then there's the Ark of the Covenant, a sacred object said to house the Ten Commandments and radiate divine power. But where did it go? Was it destroyed, hidden, or taken by someone who knew its true power? And finally, the story of the mysterious writing on the wall in the book of Daniel. What did those cryptic words really mean, and how did they predict the fall of Babylon? These aren't just idle questions. Each of these mysteries holds the potential to change the way we understand history and faith. Before we dive deeper, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our community of curious minds here at Bible Flame. We're on a mission to uncover the hidden secrets of the scriptures and explore the unexplained parts of the Bible. If you're fascinated by ancient texts, biblical enigmas, and forgotten history, you're in the right place. By subscribing, you won't miss any of our in-depth explorations into some of the Bible's most puzzling mysteries. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell, so you'll always be the first to know when we uncover something new. Trust me, you won't want to miss the incredible stories we have lined up for you. Now, let's go beyond the familiar and venture into the lesser-known corners of the Bible. We'll begin with the Nephilim, a word that appears only a few times in the scriptures, yet has sparked debates and theories for centuries. Who were they? What was their true nature? Some describe them as giants, others as fallen angels. But why would such powerful beings be mentioned only briefly, as if their presence was a mere footnote in the grand story of creation? And why did they disappear so suddenly, leaving behind only traces of legends and obscure references? As we sift through ancient texts, lost scriptures, and archaeological clues, we might just find that the truth is stranger and more complex than fiction. From there, we'll travel across time and geography to follow the trail of the Ark of the Covenant. Believed to be a vessel of God's presence on earth, it's one of the Bible's most powerful and mysterious artifacts. But ever since it vanished from the biblical narrative, people have been asking, where is it now? Did it really end up in a remote church in Ethiopia? Is it hidden under the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, guarded by secrecy and fear? Or could it have been lost to time, its power and purpose forgotten forever? Whatever the answer, the search for the Ark has inspired countless expeditions, theories, and even wars. Finally, we'll turn to the chilling story of the writing on the wall, a supernatural event that marked the end of the mighty Babylonian Empire. A disembodied hand appeared, writing 4 words that struck fear into the heart of King Belshazzar. But why were these words so terrifying? And what did they really mean? Daniel's interpretation revealed their immediate significance, but scholars have long debated whether they carried a deeper, hidden message. Could these words have been a warning not just for Babylon, but for all future empires? As we uncover the historical and linguistic clues, you may find yourself questioning what else might be hidden in plain sight. So, get ready for a journey into the unknown, where ancient mysteries meet modern questions. By the end of this video, you may just look at the Bible in a whole new light. Mystery of the Nephilim. The Nephilim are one of the most fascinating yet enigmatic figures in the Bible. Mentioned briefly in Genesis 6:4, they are described as the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. But what does that really mean? Were they giants, supernatural beings, or something more complex? The very mention of these mighty ones in a single verse has sparked countless debates and theories for centuries. It's almost as if they were deliberately hidden from the main narrative, only appearing as a mysterious side note before the story of Noah's flood. Today, we're going to piece together what we know about the Nephilim, drawing from ancient texts, historical records, and modern interpretations to see if we can finally shed some light on their origins and their ultimate fate. The name Nephilim itself is shrouded in mystery. It's derived from a Hebrew root that can mean fallen ones or giants, depending on how it's translated. This ambiguity has led to multiple interpretations. Some scholars argue that they were literal giants, towering beings that once roamed the earth. Others suggest they were fallen angels, banished from heaven for rebelling against God. A third interpretation sees them as powerful human kings or rulers who had gained a divine status in the eyes of ancient people. But why would the Bible introduce these beings so briefly and then move on without much explanation? It's as if we're only getting a glimpse of a much bigger story, one that has been lost to time. If this is your first time on Bible Flame, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community of seekers and thinkers. Here, we dive deep into the unexplained parts of the Bible, exploring not just what the scriptures say, but what they could mean on a deeper level. By subscribing, you won't miss any of our in-depth analyses and thought-provoking content. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you're always in the loop when we unravel new mysteries. Now, let's get back to the story of the Nephilim, because the more we dig, the stranger it gets. One of the earliest and most influential texts outside the Bible that talks about the Nephilim is the Book of Enoch, a collection of ancient Jewish writings that is not considered part of the canonical Bible, but is still regarded as a significant source for understanding early Jewish thought. In this text, the Nephilim are described as the offspring of fallen angels called the Watchers, who took human wives. This union produced a race of giants who were violent and corrupt, leading to chaos on earth. The Book of Enoch goes into great detail about how these beings taught humanity forbidden knowledge, such as weapon making, sorcery, and astrology, which ultimately led to the corruption that triggered the Great Flood. This account raises a chilling possibility. What if the story of the Nephilim is more than just a tale of supernatural beings? Could they represent a period in human history where powerful individuals wielded knowledge and abilities far beyond what was common at the time? It would explain why early cultures around the world have legends of giants and gods who came down from the skies, bringing advanced knowledge and technology. In Sumerian, Greek, and even Norse mythology, we see echoes of these beings, whether they're called the Anunnaki, the Titans, or the Jotun, suggesting a shared mythological memory across different civilizations. But why did these giants disappear so suddenly? The Bible tells us that shortly after the appearance of the Nephilim, God decided to send the Great Flood to wipe out humanity's corruption. But there's an interesting detail. Genesis 6:4 states that the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward. This suggests that, despite the flood, the Nephilim might have survived, or at least some of them did. If that's the case, where did they go? Were they completely destroyed, or did they simply fade into legend? And more importantly, are there remnants of their existence that we can find today? Some researchers believe that the Nephilim left behind physical traces. There have been reports, though controversial, of gigantic skeletal remains found in various parts of the world, from the Middle East to North America. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, several newspapers ran stories about giant bones being unearthed by farmers or explorers. One of the most famous examples comes from Lovelock Cave in Nevada, where enormous skulls and bones were reportedly discovered, leading some to speculate that they belonged to an ancient race of giants. However, these findings have never been officially confirmed, and many were dismissed as hoaxes or exaggerations. But what if there's a kernel of truth behind these stories? One theory is that the Nephilim, if they were real, may have been wiped out in a series of catastrophic events, much like the flood narrative. Geological and archaeological evidence shows that around the time the biblical flood would have taken place, there were massive environmental shifts. floods, earthquakes, and climate changes that could have caused entire civilizations to collapse. If the Nephilim were part of an advanced pre-flood culture, these events could have marked the end of their reign. But this still doesn't explain the mention of their presence afterward. Some believe that the Nephilim went underground, hiding in remote parts of the world, or that they intermingled with human populations, their bloodline diluted but not entirely erased. This idea of a diluted Nephilim bloodline has fueled modern-day theories and conspiracy circles. There are even groups today who claim that certain powerful families or leaders carry the Nephilim gene, suggesting that the mighty ones of Genesis never truly disappeared, but instead went on to shape human history in more subtle ways. This theory, while speculative, taps into a broader fascination with the idea that history as we know it might be built on layers of hidden truths. But let's focus on what the Bible itself says and the historical context we can verify. When we turn to the rest of the Old Testament, we find additional references to giants that might be linked to the Nephilim. The most famous example is the story of Goliath. Described as a champion of the Philistines, Goliath was said to be over 9 feet tall, a formidable size even by today's standards. But what's interesting is that he wasn't alone. The Bible mentions other Rephaim and Anakim, giant tribes that lived in the land of Canaan, some of whom were encountered by the Israelites when they first scouted the Promised Land. Could these tribes be descendants of the original Nephilim? If so, what does that say about the survival of these beings long after the flood? Some theologians argue that the Nephilim story might have been exaggerated or misunderstood over time. In the ancient world, the line between mythology and reality was often blurred. Stories of great warriors or fallen kings could easily be turned into legends of giants. But this doesn't account for the consistency of these tales across different cultures and time periods. From Mesopotamia to ancient Greece, and even in Native American legends, we see recurring themes of giants. Beings of enormous size and strength who were eventually overthrown or banished. It's as if the idea of the Nephilim has been embedded in our collective memory, passed down through generations as a warning, or perhaps as a puzzle to be solved. If we approach the Nephilim story from a symbolic perspective, another interpretation emerges. Some scholars believe that the Nephilim represent the dangers of unchecked power and corruption. The phrase, sons of God, might not refer to literal angels, but to powerful leaders or rulers who abused their authority, leading to a society that was morally bankrupt. The flood, then, would symbolize a divine reset, a way to cleanse the world of its corruption. This allegorical reading sees the Nephilim not as actual beings, but as a metaphor for the consequences of crossing boundaries between the divine and human realms. However, this interpretation still doesn't explain the persistence of giant legends across multiple cultures. If the Nephilim were just a symbol, why do we find similar stories in non-biblical traditions? Could it be that the Bible is preserving a memory of a real ancient event, one that has been passed down and transformed by various societies over thousands of years? This is where the line between myth and history blurs, making it difficult to separate fact from fiction. In recent years, there has been a renewed interest in finding physical evidence of the Nephilim. Some researchers have turned to the Middle East, where several ancient sites contain massive stone structures that defy explanation. One such site is Baalbek in Lebanon, where gigantic stones weighing over 1,000 tons each were used to build the foundation of a temple complex. The sheer size and precision of these stones have led some to speculate that they were built by a race of giants or beings with extraordinary strength. While mainstream archaeology attributes these structures to the ingenuity of ancient engineers, the mystery remains. How were such massive stones moved and placed with such accuracy? Another site of interest is Gilgal Rephaim in the Golan Heights, a stone structure resembling a massive wheel with concentric circles of stone walls. Its purpose and origin are unknown, but local legends link it to the Rephaim, a race of giants mentioned in the Bible. Could these ancient ruins be remnants of Nephilim settlements, or are they simply the work of long-forgotten human societies? As we uncover more of these sites, the story of the Nephilim becomes even more complex. In the end, the mystery of the Nephilim remains unsolved. Whether they were giants, fallen angels, or powerful rulers, their presence in the Bible and other ancient texts suggests that they played a significant role in early human history. But why were they mentioned so briefly? Was it to keep their memory alive, or to hint at something too dangerous for us to fully understand? Perhaps the truth is buried somewhere in the past, waiting to be discovered. For now, all we can do is piece together the clues and keep asking questions. Because the more we learn about the Nephilim, the more it feels like we're just scratching the surface of a much larger, much older story, one that continues to echo through time, challenging us to rethink what we thought we knew about the world's most mysterious giants. The Lost Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant is one of the most famous yet elusive artifacts in human history. Described in the Bible as a sacred chest built by the Israelites under the direction of Moses, it was said to house the tablets of the Ten Commandments, Aaron's rod, and a pot of manna. But the Ark was more than just a container of holy objects. It represented the very presence of God on earth. In its heyday, it was a symbol of divine power and a source of miracles. It led armies into battle, caused rivers to part, and struck down those who approached it without permission. But then, just as suddenly as it appeared in biblical history, the Ark vanished. How could something so powerful disappear without a trace? And if it still exists, where could it be hiding? To understand the mystery of the Ark's disappearance, we first need to look at its history. According to the Bible, the Ark was built at the base of Mount Sinai, where God gave Moses the Ten Commandments. Constructed of acacia wood and overlaid with pure gold, it measured about 4 feet long, 2.5 feet wide, and 2.5 feet high. On top of it were 2 golden cherubim facing each other, with their wings spread over what was called the mercy seat. This was the place where God's presence would descend, making the Ark the holiest object in the entire tabernacle. When the Israelites were in the wilderness, the Ark was carried by Levite priests and was housed in a tent called the Tabernacle of Meeting. It was central to the worship and rituals of the Israelites, and it led them on their journey to the Promised Land. But it wasn't just a religious object. It was also a weapon of power. The Bible records several incidents where the Ark unleashed devastating force. When the Israelites crossed the Jordan River to enter the Promised Land, the river stopped flowing as soon as the priests carrying the Ark stepped into the water. When they marched around the walls of Jericho, it was the Ark's presence that caused the mighty walls to crumble. Yet, despite its power, the Ark's role in the Bible comes to an abrupt end. After the Babylonian conquest of Jerusalem in 587 BC, the Ark simply disappears from the biblical narrative. No one knows what happened to it. Was it taken by the Babylonians? Was it hidden away by the priests? Or did it meet a fate too shocking to record? If this is your first time joining us here at Bible Flame, make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated on our explorations of the Bible's greatest mysteries. We delve into topics that challenge conventional thinking and bring fresh perspectives to age-old questions. By subscribing, you won't miss any of our investigations into these complex subjects. And if you want to be the first to hear when we uncover something new, turn on that notification bell. With so many secrets still buried in the Bible, you'll want to be part of the journey as we unravel them together. Now, back to the Ark. Several theories attempt to explain its disappearance. One popular theory is that the Ark was hidden before the Babylonians could capture it. According to the second book of Maccabees, a Jewish text written around 100 BC, the prophet Jeremiah took the Ark and hid it in a cave on Mount Nebo, the mountain from which Moses first saw the Promised Land. This account claims that Jeremiah sealed the cave, saying that the Ark would remain hidden until the time that God gathers his people again. But Mount Nebo is a vast, rugged area with numerous caves and crevices. If the Ark is indeed hidden there, finding it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. Another theory suggests that the Ark was taken to Ethiopia, where it is still guarded to this day. According to Ethiopian tradition, the Ark was brought to the country by Menelik I, the son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. This story, which is detailed in the Ethiopian holy book Kebra Nagast, claims that Menelik, upon visiting his father Solomon, secretly took the ark back to Ethiopia. Today, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims to have the ark in a small, guarded chapel in the city of Axum. However, no one is allowed to see it except for a single guardian monk who dedicates his entire life to protecting it. Skeptics argue that there is no proof that the object in Axum is the true ark, but the tradition is so deeply rooted in Ethiopian culture that believers see it as more than just a legend. A third theory places the ark somewhere closer to its original home, in Jerusalem. Some researchers believe that before the Babylonians breached the city, the ark was hidden in a secret chamber beneath the Temple Mount. This idea gained traction after the discovery of ancient tunnels and chambers under the mount, suggesting that the temple priests may have created a hidden network to protect their most sacred objects. Yet excavations in the area are heavily restricted due to political and religious sensitivities, making it nearly impossible to confirm or deny this theory. If the ark is indeed buried beneath the Temple Mount, it could remain hidden indefinitely, its secrets sealed away in one of the world's most contested pieces of real estate. But not all theories involve the ark being hidden. Some believe it was destroyed during the Babylonian siege. The ark was not invincible, and its power seemed to depend on the people's faith and obedience to God. When the Israelites turned away from God, the ark fell into enemy hands, as when the Philistines captured it after the disastrous Battle of Aphek. However, the Philistines quickly returned it after a series of plagues struck their cities, leading them to believe that keeping the ark brought them misfortune. If the Babylonians did seize the ark, they might have melted down its golden parts and discarded the rest as spoils of war. This would explain why no trace of it has ever been found. Interestingly, there are also theories linking the ark to legendary relics outside the biblical tradition. Some suggest that the ark could be related to the mythical Holy Grail, a cup said to have held Christ's blood and possess miraculous powers. This theory argues that both the ark and the Grail are representations of the same concept, a divine vessel that connects heaven and earth. Another theory ties the ark to the lapis exilis, a stone said to be the fallen jewel from Lucifer's crown, possessing untold power. While these connections are speculative, they show how the ark's influence extends far beyond the pages of the Bible, weaving into myths and legends across cultures. But what would happen if the ark were found today? The implications would be enormous, both politically and religiously. For Jews, the ark represents the lost glory of the first temple, and its return would be seen as a sign of God's renewed favor. For Christians, the ark is a symbol of God's covenant with humanity and a precursor to Christ's ultimate sacrifice. Its discovery could strengthen faith or challenge it, depending on what was found inside. But more than that, the ark carries with it a sense of danger. Throughout history, people who sought the ark met tragic ends. From King Saul, who lost his throne after mishandling the ark, to Uzzah, who was struck dead for touching it. The ark's history is filled with warnings. Even the legend of the Knights Templar, who some believe searched for the ark during the Crusades, ends with the order's mysterious dissolution and persecution. In modern times, the search for the ark has taken on a new dimension. With advanced technology like ground-penetrating radar and DNA analysis, researchers have tools that previous generations could only dream of. Yet, the quest remains elusive. For some, the search is not just about finding a physical object. It's about uncovering a spiritual truth. The ark, with its promise of divine power and protection, represents the human desire to connect with the divine and understand the mysteries of existence. Perhaps that's why its disappearance still captivates us today. There are, of course, those who believe the ark's true power was never in its physical form, but in what it represented. In this view, the ark is a symbol of faith, obedience, and the relationship between God and his people. When that relationship was broken, the ark's power vanished. Finding the ark, then, would be less about uncovering an ancient relic and more about restoring that lost connection. This interpretation sees the ark as a metaphor, one that challenges us to reflect on our own spiritual journeys. But regardless of whether the Ark still exists physically, its influence endures. It has inspired countless works of art, literature, and film. Most famously, Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Indiana Jones races against the Nazis to recover the fabled artifact. The movie, while fictional, taps into a real and powerful fascination. What if the Ark still holds the power to alter the course of history? What if, somewhere in a hidden chamber, deep beneath the earth or sealed within an ancient temple, the Ark still waits? For now, the Ark of the Covenant remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Whether hidden in a cave, buried under a temple, or lost forever, it continues to draw us in, whispering of a time when the divine walked among us. And who knows, perhaps one day it will be found. Until then, we can only wonder what secrets lie within its golden walls and what stories it has yet to tell. The writing on the wall. The story of the writing on the wall is one of the most mysterious and unsettling moments in the Bible. It takes place in the book of Daniel, during a time of great tension and political upheaval in the ancient world. The setting is the royal palace of Babylon, the most powerful empire of its time. King Belshazzar, the ruler of Babylon, was hosting a lavish banquet surrounded by nobles, concubines, and officials. Wine flowed freely, and the mood was festive. But then something strange happened, a moment that would change the course of history forever. In the midst of the revelry, a hand appeared out of nowhere. A disembodied hand, suspended in midair, began to write on the palace wall. The words it wrote were in a language no one could understand. Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. Instantly, the room fell silent. Fear gripped the king and his face turned pale. What did these words mean, and who or what had sent this chilling message? To understand the significance of this event, we need to know a bit more about King Belshazzar. He was not the original king of Babylon, but the son of Nabonidus, who had left him in charge while he went on a long campaign in Arabia. Belshazzar was known for his arrogance and disregard for the holy objects of other religions. The Bible tells us that during the feast, he ordered that the sacred vessels from the temple in Jerusalem, objects that his father's forces had stolen decades earlier, be brought out and used for drinking. These were not ordinary cups and plates. They were holy items dedicated to the worship of the God of Israel. By using them in a drunken celebration, Belshazzar was openly mocking the God of the Jews. This act of disrespect set the stage for the divine warning that would follow. As the mysterious hand moved across the wall, the king's fear turned to panic. He immediately called for his wise men, the astrologers, enchanters, and diviners of Babylon, to read and interpret the words. But none of them could. They stared at the writing, unable to grasp its meaning. This failure added to the king's anxiety. Desperate, Belshazzar offered a reward. Whoever could interpret the writing would be clothed in purple, given a gold chain, and elevated to the rank of third ruler in the kingdom. But no one stepped forward. That's when the queen mother, hearing the commotion, entered the hall and reminded Belshazzar of a man named Daniel. Daniel was a Jewish exile who had been brought to Babylon as a young man during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar's grandfather. Over the years, he had gained a reputation for wisdom and the ability to interpret dreams and visions. But by this time, Daniel was no longer in a position of power. He had been sidelined by the new regime, his talents forgotten by those in charge. Yet in this moment of crisis, he was summoned back to the royal court. When Daniel arrived, he was calm, composed, a stark contrast to the trembling king. After being promised great rewards, Daniel refused them, saying, "Keep your gifts for yourself, or give them to someone else." He was not interested in wealth or titles. He was there to deliver a message that the king would not want to hear. Daniel began by reminding Belshazzar of his grandfather, Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar had been a powerful king, but he had grown proud and defied the God of heaven. As punishment, he lost his sanity and lived like an animal for 7 years until he finally humbled himself and acknowledged God's sovereignty. Belshazzar knew this story. He knew how his grandfather had been brought low by pride and arrogance. Yet, despite knowing all this, Belshazzar had not learned from the past. Instead, he had repeated the same mistakes, mocking God and exalting himself. Daniel's rebuke was sharp. You have not honored the God who holds in his hand your life and all your ways." Then Daniel turned his attention to the writing on the wall. The words mene, mene, tekel, upharsin were in Aramaic, a common language in the ancient Near East, but their meaning was hidden in a clever play on words. Each term was a form of measurement. Mene meant numbered, tekel meant weighed, and upharsin was a form of the word divided. But Daniel saw a deeper meaning in them. He explained, "Mene, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Paris, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians." The words were a divine judgment. Belshazzar's kingdom, which seemed so secure and mighty, was about to be taken from him. The irony of the situation was that while Belshazzar was feasting, the Persian army was already at the gates of Babylon. That very night, while the king and his court were still reeling from Daniel's interpretation, the Persians launched a surprise attack. They diverted the waters of the Euphrates River, which ran through the city, lowering its level enough for their soldiers to enter under the walls. Babylon, thought to be impregnable, fell in a matter of hours. Belshazzar was killed, and the great Babylonian Empire came to an abrupt and humiliating end. The words on the wall were not just a prophecy, they were a death sentence. But why did God choose to communicate in such a dramatic and terrifying manner? What was the purpose of the writing on the wall? Some scholars believe that this was more than just a warning to Belshazzar. It was a message to all rulers and empires throughout history. The story of the writing on the wall is a reminder that no power, no matter how great, is beyond God's reach. Empires rise and fall, but divine justice endures. The words numbered, weighed, and divided are not just about Belshazzar. They're about the fragile nature of human power and the consequences of pride. The story also highlights the importance of humility and self-awareness. Belshazzar had every opportunity to learn from the past. He knew what had happened to Nebuchadnezzar. He knew the dangers of arrogance and sacrilege. Yet he chose to ignore these lessons. By using the holy vessels from the temple in his feast, he was making a statement that he was untouchable, that he was above God. But the writing on the wall proved otherwise. His kingdom was weighed and found wanting, and his reign ended in a single night. In many ways, Belshazzar's downfall was not just a political event, but a moral one, a warning about the perils of hubris. There's also a deeper question here. Why did no one else in the palace see what was coming? Why were they all caught off guard by the Persians? One explanation is that they were too distracted, too absorbed in their own pleasures and power to notice the signs of their downfall. They had become blind to the dangers around them, trusting in the strength of their walls and the reputation of their empire. In contrast, Daniel, an outsider, a foreigner, and a man of faith, saw clearly what was happening. His spiritual insight allowed him to interpret not just the words on the wall, but the reality of the world around him. This contrast between blindness and sight, between arrogance and wisdom, is at the heart of the story. Over the centuries, the phrase, "the writing on the wall," has become a common expression used to describe an inevitable doom or a fate that cannot be escaped. But in its original context, it's more than just a warning. It's a challenge. The challenge is to look beyond appearances, to recognize when things are weighed and found wanting, and to act with humility before it's too late. The story of Belshazzar is not just about a king who lost his kingdom. It's about the consequences of ignoring the signs, of thinking that power and wealth make one invincible. It's a lesson that still resonates today, in a world where the powerful often believe they are beyond judgment. One of the most striking aspects of this story is how quickly everything changes. In a single night, the mightiest city in the world falls. Belshazzar, who is celebrating his supposed invincibility, is dead by dawn. The empire that once ruled over nations is divided and handed over to a new power. And all of this is captured in a few cryptic words scrawled on a wall. The writing on the wall is a reminder that life itself is fragile, that what seems permanent can vanish in an instant. In that sense, the story speaks to everyone, not just kings and rulers. It calls us to be mindful, to be aware of the writing that might be on our own walls. But what if the story has another layer of meaning? Some theologians and historians suggest that the writing on the wall might not have been just for Belshazzar, but for the Jewish people as well. At the time of this event, the Jews were living in exile, far from their homeland. The fall of Babylon marked the beginning of a new chapter in their history, as the Persians, unlike the Babylonians, allowed the Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple. In this sense, the writing on the wall was not just a judgment against Babylon, but a signal of hope for the exiles. It meant that their time of suffering was coming to an end, and that God had not forgotten them. It was a turning point, a moment when the balance of power shifted in a way that would shape the future of the Jewish people. So, what does the story of the writing on the wall mean for us today? It's a reminder that nothing is as secure as it seems. It's a call to humility, to recognize that all our achievements, all our power can be numbered and weighed at any moment. But it's also a story of hope, a sign that even in the darkest times, change is possible. For the Jews in exile, the fall of Babylon was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. For Belshazzar, it was the end of his arrogance and a lesson that would echo through history. In the end, the writing on the wall is more than just a story of a doomed king and a fallen empire. It's a timeless message that speaks to the human condition. It reminds us that pride can lead to downfall, that the powerful are not untouchable, and that justice, though sometimes delayed, is inevitable. And perhaps more than anything, it calls us to see the signs, to be aware, to read the writing in our own lives, and to act before it's too late. Conclusion and final thoughts. From the mysterious Nephilim and the lost Ark of the Covenant to the eerie writing on the wall, each of these Bible mysteries offers more than just intriguing stories. They point to deeper themes that humanity has struggled to understand for centuries. The Nephilim raise questions about the boundaries between the human and the divine, reminding us of the dangers of power unchecked and knowledge misused. The Ark of the Covenant symbolizes a lost connection to the divine, a powerful reminder of both the wonder and the risk of trying to harness something so sacred. And the writing on the wall speaks to the fragility of human power and the consequences of arrogance, warning that no empire, no matter how strong, is immune to divine judgment. But beyond their individual lessons, these stories share something else. They all suggest that there are layers to the Bible that we've yet to fully uncover. Why are these events mentioned only briefly in the scriptures? Why do so many of them remain unexplained? It's almost as if these mysteries are hints, clues left behind for us to find, challenging us to look deeper, to question, and to seek the hidden meanings that may change the way we see the world and our place in it. For those who are drawn to these mysteries, the search itself is part of the journey. It's not just about solving a puzzle or finding an ancient artifact. It's about understanding the larger story, the one that connects the past to the present and maybe even shapes the future. Perhaps the true purpose of these mysteries is not to be solved, but to inspire us to keep asking questions and seeking answers. If you're as fascinated by these mysteries as I am, don't forget to hit subscribe and join our community here at Bible Flame. What mystery should we explore next? Let me know in the comments below. Your thoughts and questions could lead us to our next big discovery. After all, the Bible is filled with hidden secrets, and together we can continue to unravel them one by one.